What is wrong with Carolyn on Survivor? Nothing! Nothing is wrong with me. Next question. Is Carolyn on Survivor autistic? No! And why is it that we have to diagnose somebody who is different? It does not mean that because I am a little bit strange, a little bit weird, that I have a diagnosis. But if you do want to diagnose me with something, you can diagnose me with ADHD, because that's what I have.
Hello, welcome to Trash Opinions, where we talk all things trash. I am your host, Trash, and today we are going to be talking about Survivor 44, a season I also watched live, but I wasn't as closely invested into it for reasons we will get into. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content about shows I like in the future, because we are nearing the very end of this series, and we are going to get into some other stuff. But I will be releasing Survivor-related content periodically, but let's just get right on into Survivor 44. And the first contestant we are going to be talking about is someone who really didn't even get a chance to play the game, and that is Bruce Perreault. On the first challenge, Bruce smacks the crap out of his head on a piece of challenge equipment and is bleeding out his forehead pretty bad, like he's Stone Cold Steve Austin. When they get back to camp, he seems fine up until his head starts severely hurting him, and it really seems like he's just concussed from the start. They decide to pull him from the game, but it's not all sad because they let him come back to Survivor 45 at least. They actually gave us nothing with Bruce, but it's not his fault. He didn't get a chance. And now for the actual bottom, we have Kane Fritzler.
Here he comes, ladies and gentlemen! Here comes Kane!
Kane is on the bottom and idol hunting after being one of the negated votes for Brandon. He then sings some song he made up that's supposedly the national anthem to a country that doesn't exist, and then he plays with a sword while talking about being a fantasy nerd. Wow, never would have guessed. He nerds out with Carson talking about Pokemon types and Jedi, and why the hell are all the nerd archetypes on shows into like the most mainstream shit ever? It's always like Star Wars, Marvel, Pokemon, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. What I mean is you never see a guy on a show who's more into niche nerd shit. Like, let me tell you about Suikoden 2. Have you ever read Garth Ennis? Dude, you gotta check out some Mitsuharu Misawa matches when you get home. When did nerd start to mean likes popular media that everyone likes? Whatever, I digress. Anyway, he serves as the easy vote until he is the easy vote. He brings up Dungeons & Dragons a couple more times, and then he sits out of the immunity challenge for Rice. The tribe is so grateful to him sitting out that they vote him out as he calls them bitches. Kane is the biggest dud on the cast. He just offered nothing, and he is for sure going into meh. And going back to the pre-merge, we have Claire Rafson. Claire sure exists. Claire asks details about the journey from Matthew during a challenge, and she feeds him information that Matt showed her a piece of paper that said he lost his vote, tipping off Matthew not to trust Lauren, who lied to him earlier about the journey. Claire sits out of every immunity challenge, and that's used as the explanation for why she goes home. But that can't be the only reason. I think she may have just been on the bottom and destined to go anyway. I don't know though, because the edit shows that she was well integrated socially at that Soka tribe. She was just trying to turn the Sandra bench into the Claire bench. That's not gonna fly here. When you try to be Sandra and you're not Sandra, you're gonna have a bad time. So she goes out way earlier than some people expected. I really don't find her interesting at all, and she lands in meh. And next in line, but not that much above her, we have Helen Li. She does the Savvy Challenge with Carson and actually seems like she's getting the brain teaser more than the puzzle guy, Carson, as she identifies the trick to the puzzle pretty much immediately. She works with Sarah to try to take out Carolyn, thinking she has Carson and Yam Yam with her, but Yam Yam goes and rats her out to Carolyn. Carolyn then turns the vote on to Helen. Carson also believes Helen has the idol, so he turns against her too, and the voteless Sarah is left as the only person aligned with her, as this absolutely nothing character gets voted out. There's not much you can really say about her, and she's going in meh. And rounding out the D tier, we have Sarah Wade. Sarah gets to go on the journey where she loses her vote, but gains a new inheritance advantage, which lets you take all idols and advantages that were played at Tribal Council for yourself. Seems like an advantage that could be incredibly devastating if used in the right circumstances. Imagine if Suri had that advantage at Final 6 of Game Changers. Ugh. Imagine if you play it after a steal a vote and an extra vote were played and now you have 3 votes. Oh, the possibility. abilities. Sarah becomes close with Yam Yam, and it seems like her and him are a pair, while Carolyn and Carson are the other pair. She sees a red X near the bench logs at camp that looked exactly like the X she saw on the birdcage, and nonchalantly digs for the idol in front of everyone, finding it lodged in the log. What she doesn't know is it's a fake idol planted by Carolyn. Josh then gets swapped over to Tico, where Sarah asks him if he's a surgeon, due to Josh saying that he had steady hands at one of the immunity challenges. He tells her he's a personal trainer, and Sarah immediately knows Josh is lying. She says she's going to have to play her idol if Josh plays his idol, but she doesn't, and Sarah gets voted out. I'm laughing to myself imagining her thinking for a few months that she was voted out with an idol in her pocket, and then the season airs and she realizes it was a fake that whole time. I want to see her reaction to finding out. I really do. Anyway, I don't think she was all that entertaining of a character, despite having potential to make it far in the game with Yam Yam as her main ally had she made the merge, or if Josh was never swapped there. I think I'm gonna have to throw her in meh. And for our first surprising pick of rootable tier, we actually have Maddy Pomilla. Maddy may be one of the most underratedly fascinating boots in Survivor history. Maddy sees Brandon putting the key to the birdcage in his pocket after doing a totally not suspicious stretch that catches her attention, as she remarks there's clearly something recently put in his pocket. Brandon then realizes Maddy's too smart to not know something's up, so he tells her about it, and Maddy says she wants to keep it between them, which clues Brandon in that she shouldn't be trusted. She quickly becomes aware of the fact that Brandon doesn't want to work with her when she decides to announce his discovery to the entire tribe instead of using it as an olive branch to become aligned with Maddy. So now Maddy wants to blindside Brandon after they lose that first immunity challenge, going to Lauren and Jaime about it, and then she attempts to rope in Matthew, and it's unclear where he would have went. It's a plan that could have worked if Kane and Maddy had split their votes. Jaime and Matthew both played her shot in the darks, which possibly keyed Brandon into playing his idol, and I'm not sure if he would have played his idol regardless at this tribal, but he plays it after 2 shot in the dark plays and Jaime being safe, so it's definitely possible he smelled something cooking and went with his gut. With Lauren also banking her vote, it's just Maddy and Kane voting with 2 negated votes against Brandon, who votes Maddy, as Maddy becomes the first ever first boot to be eliminated by a single vote. Would this technically make her a top tier first boot gameplay wise? Possibly. There's no other first boot who was ever idled out while being in the majority either, I don't think. She was the most advantage screwed first boot ever, but she also made the dumb move of targeting someone with an idol without splitting votes. If she survives this round and Brandon goes home, there's a strong chance she makes it far. Maddy was pretty well integrated in her tribe, with the only person seemingly not wanting to work with her being Brandon. I feel like she's well positioned enough in the tribe's social structure and socially savvy enough to have a deep run in her. If there's a reason to have an all early boot season to correct some wrongs, it's Maddy. Actually, she would probably be my winner pick of that season. While I honestly think she offers nothing of substance as a character in her one episode, I think her boot is a fascinating enough anomaly to elevate her. She just had so much potential, and it's kind of hard not to remember her as a possible great Survivor player who never was. I just really want to see an alternate universe where Brandon never finds that idol, just to see if I'm right. Since it's a lot more interesting of a tale than Lindsay's boot last season, I think this kind of downfall actually does qualify her for the bottom of fun downfall. Now we have someone I expected to be higher, actually, but here we have Frannie Marin. First of all, Frannie and Matt's relationship is cuter than Romber. Yes, I said it. Frannie is a dorky librarian type who forms a very strong bond with Matt on her tribe, which starts to make them a target. Unfortunately, almost all of her content in the pre-merge is about her and Matt's blossoming relationship, which I admit is really cute, but it's all she has there. She admits she might have a crush on him, and it's just adorable because you could tell production is just prodding these admissions out of her, and she's even blushing. I definitely like Frannie. This content is definitely in her favor. At the merge, she wins the first immunity challenge, winning immunity for half the tribe, ironically leading to Matt being voted out. She is absolutely devastated when Matt is voted out, and she has this immunity streak where she wins 2 of the first 3 and getting Danny to play as idol on her during her loss. And then she loses the 4th immunity challenge, and that's when she goes out. out. She doesn't really have a lot of agency in her after Matt's gone. She is throwing names out there, and she correctly identifies Tika as the real threat, but she keeps being undermined by people like Danny who are calling her moves illogical when they actually make sense. She shows how good of a person she is when she wins the Loved Ones reward challenge and chooses the 3 moms left in the game because she knew they needed it the most. I agree with what Terry Dietz said about Loved Ones rewards. Kids and spouses take priority over someone's parents or siblings. It's just different. However, I displayed how much of an asshole I am by laughing while they were all openly crying reading their letters, because while Frannie was reading hers, my brain went, I wonder if Matt sent her a letter from Ponderosa, and I just started busting up laughing, imagining him like in that room from Eminem's Stan video. Dear Frannie, I miss you so much. It's been 4 days since our last Doctor Who reference. Frannie then decides to go out fighting in a last-ditch effort trying to orchestrate this Heidi boot with Carolyn, Lauren, and Jaime. Lauren doesn't go with the plan, and Yam Yam and Carson go behind Carolyn's back to vote out Frannie instead. A lot of people say she's a great player, but I really don't see it. She had way too obvious of an alliance with Matt. She didn't have any other real allies in the game other than maybe Danny, and she most likely would have been the merge boot if she didn't win immunity 2 times. She's also not as interesting as a character as her counterpart. I found her a tad on the dull side. However, I did at least like her enough to put her in queue. And now to someone else who disappointed me, we are coming up to Lauren Hart. It's a shame Lauren's hair is tied back and covered for the entire season because it's great hair. Lauren does the first journey with Matt and Sarah where she gets the bank of vote advantage, letting her sacrifice a vote one tribal to use at another tribal. I'm not sure why it couldn't just be an extra vote, but whatever. Just seems kinda underpowered compared to Sarah's freaking Omni steal she got. Lauren pockets her extra vote at the first tribal, helping to contribute how weird that whole vote was. She's very quiet until the merge, where Heidi uses the controller vote advantage on Lauren, making her vote for Yam Yam for some reason, and she smartly chooses not to use her second vote to circumvent this because Matt was going home anyway. She then wins immunity and gets this really rootable mom moment where she talks about how proud her kids will be of her, and this has to be like the 30th time someone has said this, and I'm like, yeah, of course your kids are gonna be proud of you. They love you. What, you think they're gonna go, wow mom, you really fucked up on that obstacle course, I don't know if I love you anymore, might have to call CPS and find myself a new foster family where maybe my foster mom would be able to cross a fucking balance beam. Anyway, she tells her alliance she wants to split the votes between somebody else and Frannie in case of an idol play, but nobody wanted to listen to her, which frustrated her as she loses her ally in Brandon. Then for the next couple votes she's just kinda there, voting with Jaime, but seemingly not really contributing much to the strategy side of things, just kinda going along with whoever, with no real rhyme or reason, because she's just kinda letting the Tikas take control. She tried to reel in Yam Yam to take out Carolyn with them, but instead Jaime and Lauren are blindsided when Jaime is sent home instead. She just kinda gives up in the round where she gets voted out for some reason and just accepts her fate, having this big bombastic farewell speech at her final tribal council. I really think her and Heidi could have broken up that Tika 3 and maybe eliminated Carson or Yam Yam here, and it's really disappointing that both her and Heidi both refused to make a move at Final 5. She finally shows some personality at the very end, but Lauren just did nothing really. She fakes everyone out by acting like she's pulling out an idol before the votes, but goes, LOL JK. It's a mom joke coming from a mom, so it's okay. I mean, I guess she was rootable enough and I do like her enough to put her in queue. And finishing off the trio of disappointment, we have Heidi Lagares-Greenblatt. Heidi might as well have not existed in the pre-merge. I don't think they spent any time developing her. She gets the controller vote advantage at the merge, where at that next tribal she can tell a player to vote for someone and they have to vote for them. She uses it to make Lauren vote for Yam Yam for some reason, as she's the only one voting with Matt, making her finding that advantage kinda pointless. Maybe it was to draw out the extra vote? I don't know. She gets the idea to blindside Brandon the next tribal in order to save Frannie a potential number for her. Heidi almost ruins it by telling Yam Yam about Danny's idol and his plans to use it on Frannie, but luckily Yam Yam doesn't let that spill to the other side. Brandon is taken out as her numbers get a little bit more even. This is where I suspected Heidi might be a dark horse under the radar winner like Erica, but all of those feelings were dashed in the next few tribals. Danny then tells her he doesn't need her as a number for the Frannie vote vote, which obviously pisses Heidi off, and she's almost a boot until Yam Yam and Carson flip the vote against Frannie instead. She's left the only one voting Danny, and looking pretty silly as Danny is still there the next day, wondering who voted for him as Heidi just stays silent. She's then blindsided as Danny gets voted out by the Tika 3, and here is when I'm thinking Heidi could maybe work out a plan to take out one of the Tika 3, but instead she just votes with them, never really making a move of her own or pulling the trigger on anything really. It's really disappointing actually. She tells Carolyn her ideal final 3 is Yam Yam, Carolyn, and her, which is hilarious because that is the final 3, where she loses badly. She then wins final immunity and has to choose between making fire herself or guaranteeing herself into the final 3. She does the opposite of what Cassidy does and takes on fire making against a young kid. Wow, you're just gonna bully Harry Potter over here? Okay. She goes into final tribal. For some reason she gets a vote and I'm just left totally disappointed by her. I had high hopes for her, but she just never made a move against the Tika 3. I just felt frustrated by her, but I guess she has that likable mom energy to her where I can put her in mildly entertaining. Next up is someone I'm surprised is this high, but we have Brandon Cottom. Brandon gets a lot of focus in the first episode when he and Matthew are doing the sweat challenge and dragging a bag of coconuts together. He then finds the key to the birdcage on day 2 and isn't sure if Maddy saw him take it or not, so he decides to show her in an attempt to get her more on his side. Ironically enough, her saying she wants to keep it a secret between them causes Brandon to not trust her. He opens the cage to find an immunity idol in front of the entire tribe, and he immediately regrets doing so, since all this would be much better off as a secret. Gee, dude, you think? Maddy wants to now blindside Brandon, and it's looking like there's a chance the most athletic guy on the tribe might become the first boot, which is something we haven't seen since I think Thailand. He plays his idol after Jaime and Matthew use their knowledge as power, and saves himself from being the first boot, knocking Maddy out single-handedly. He lays low for the rest of the pre-merge and gets some content about being a Renaissance man until eventually being chosen for the journey that turns out to be a feast. Danny is so excited to meet him, and they make this cross-tribe alliance with each other while ignoring the fact that Carolyn is right there. He has the majority to take out Frannie, but then Danny plays an idol on her, and Brandon ironically goes from being saved by an idol in the first round to being idled out of the game. Brandon started strong, but his edit just goes off of a cliff and stays there until he goes home, but I guess this mini-boss getting defeated was a fun downfall. And someone else that I'm really surprised is this high, we have Josh Wilder. Josh is so ridiculously aloof that I don't know what to make of him, since he's invisible until episode 4. He's like the Geo of the tribe, where he thinks he's running the show and that he's in the middle of 2 alliances, when in reality he's on the bottom and he's the next to go if they go to tribal. He then goes to the journey, which grants him an immunity idol but is also a swap, and he gets swapped to Tika, where he for some reason lies about his job and says he's a personal trainer, and I don't get why he would lie about being a surgeon. Like, okay, if you're a lawyer or a police officer, I get lying about that, but he's a surgeon. I don't think anyone's thinking, oh, those crafty and conniving surgeons, we gotta watch out for those people. Surgeons are basically the jocks of the medical field anyway. You ever see Scrubs? Yeah, I know a surgeon won last season, but this cast doesn't know that yet, and even if they did, Gabler wasn't exactly crafty. Lying about your life is only gonna make you unable to actually connect with people because you're lying about who you are, and that's exactly why nobody feels like they can trust Josh. Nobody believes his story, and he's getting a dodo edit where they're showing Carolyn looking confused as he's telling them things, like something's not adding up. Josh and Carolyn then work together to vote out Sarah, and Josh uses his idol on himself, negating the 2 votes against him as they knock Sarah out in a 2-0 vote, leaving Yam Yam shocked. Josh takes it personally when Yam Yam votes for him and tells him straight up he doesn't trust him, which is just another in a line of bad Josh moves in this Yam Yam and Josh rivalry. Like how he makes a fake immunity idol to try to trick Yam Yam into thinking he has 2 immunity idols. He shows his fake idol to Yam Yam, and Yam Yam already knows it's a fake, and this is why making a fake idol was a bad idea in the first place. It even comes apart as Yam Jam's just holding it. It's the worst fake idol since Ozzy's stick. Josh then gets some personal content about being born with prune belly syndrome, a rare kidney birth defect, and then later getting stomach cancer. He wasn't supposed to make it past age 5, but he made it to Survivor, and like Daniel, I'm glad he can exist as a healthy adult. He gets saved by Matthew quitting the game, and I found the part when Josh started clapping, followed by, "Oh yeah, and I'm sorry he went home," to be a pretty great Josh moment. He then spins multiple different stories about his idol situation, telling Brandon he has an idol, but then telling Jaime he doesn't have an idol, and I don't think even he understands why he's doing this. He just knows his stories need to become aligned eventually somehow. All he's doing is spinning distrust, and it's why he's the next to be sent home packed. He starts off invisible like the rest of Soka, but gets a really fun sympathetic villain arc on Tika that leads to him flaming out, and it averages out to just being pretty decent. And I kinda wish we got more of him. Just the Yam Yam, Josh, and Carolyn dynamic was so much fun, and we should have gotten more of it. I'm gonna throw him in fun downfall. Next, we have someone who was a fan favorite, but in recent years has fallen from grace a little bit, and we have Carson Garrett. Carson gets a ton of focus in the first episode by talking about how he 3D printed Survivor puzzles and would solve them. I personally hate this because it just highlights how fucking lazy Survivor has become. He successfully completes the Savvy Challenge with Helen, and he gets some content about how he actually gained 30 pounds before going on Survivor, and that he's always been the awkward skinny nerd who's never had a girlfriend. He also creates an alliance between him, Helen, and Sarah, which doesn't last since Helen is the first out from their tribe. He then goes on the journey, which grants him an immunity idol, but it also gets him swapped to Ratu. He feeds them a bullshit story about how he's on the bottom of Tika and Yam Yam is running the tribe with Carolyn, and Ratu believes it, taking him under their wing as one of their own. They don't go to tribal anyway, and Carson now has this plan to secretly work with Carolyn and Yam Yam, forming the Tika 3. He tells Kane he's the secondary vote, causing Yam Yam to become the new backup target and making it kinda obvious that he's playing both sides, which nobody really catches on to for some reason. He then wins a team immunity and reward challenge for peanut butter and jelly sandwich, in which he throws all of it up the next day.
It's peanut butter jelly time! Peanut butter jelly!
Him and Yam Yam leave Carolyn out of the loop when they vote Frannie out instead of Heidi. Carolyn's pissed, but she gets over it pretty quickly enough to use her idol on Carson. After the Lauren boot, he loses final immunity to Heidi, and he starts to practice fire, and he gets some sympathetic content where he's lacking the confidence to make fire and starts crying because he's just so scared of losing and going home at 4th. Yam Yam then decides to coach Carson through fire making, even though there's a chance there could be opponents in the challenge. To his credit, while he does lose fire making to Heidi, she breaks the record set by Gabler last season to do it, and Carson at least came close to her, so yeah, on any other season he would have won fire making and then the game, but here, he was just up against 3 of the best fire makers we've seen so far. It's like going up against 3 Boston Robs. The deck was just stacked against him. All in all, I think Carson's just kind of okay. Fantastic player. He probably beats Yam Yam at the end. He had great relationships with almost everybody, and he is how the Tika 3 was able to take over the game. I know he's not popular nowadays due to some Etsy plagiarism scandal I only heard about in passing, but Carson can at least go into a good player. Getting into the top 6, we have Matt Blankinship. Matt and Frannie hit it off right away while weaving palm fronds together, and they're immediately a duo. Matt starts channeling his inner Owen when he goes on the journey, plays a game of chance twice, and loses both times, and now he doesn't have a vote for the next 2 tribals. Matt then reveals he got broken up with before going on Survivor, with Frannie comforting him, and he has this hopeless romantic energy to him as he's just talking about finding Frannie to be cute, and even saying her snort laugh makes his heart gush. However, all this cutesy flirty rapport with Frannie is just making Matt a target. He finds the key Danny planted and takes Danny's fake idol from the birdcage, thinking he got one over on everyone else when he really is just walking into battle with a water pistol. Jaime is then swapped to their tribe, and him and Frannie both know she needs to go, and it becomes apparent this is more than just an alliance. Matt clearly has feelings for Frannie, and he even admits there's a spark between them. They're so cute when they're talking about reward challenges, and then they start to hold hands. Like, why is this way cuter to me than Romber? Probably because I find the relationship between 2 weirdos a lot more adorable than a super hetero dude and his trad wife. Nothing beats geeks in love.
When they see us on the street, they wish that we were geeks in love.
Brandon explains what was in the birdcage to Matt, a real idol and a fake idol, making Matt realize he might have the fake idol. He's part of the group that loses the immunity challenge at the merge swap, and the merge vote is contained within a small group in which there are none of his allies. Even if his idol was real, he left his bag at the other camp anyway, and he doesn't have a chance to get his shot in the dark either. He offers Jeff Probst a papaya in these trying times, but it doesn't get him his bag or his shot in the dark back. It just gets him voted out. Matt's just a likable dork who got really unlucky in a swap screwed type situation where he had no control, and also he had one of the best showmances in the entire show, as they announced that they're dating at the finale, and they're still together today. Matt's a decent enough character that he can go into cute. Coming now into the top 5, we actually have Jaime Lynn Ruiz. Jaime starts off the season being a crazy lady and talking about manifesting a win being the key to earning emotional connections in Survivor, and oh, she's a yogi. Okay, yeah, this all checks out. Nothing to see here. Her tribe loses the first immunity challenge and she announces she's going to be playing her shot in the dark, and it just makes her come off as really paranoid. It spooks Matthew into playing his, and for the first time ever, Jaime is safe from a shot in the dark. Her being safe leads to Brandon playing his idol, knocking out one of Jaime's allies in Maddy. She then has content about being a plant mom and giving the camp their own house plant, and she starts calling Matthew Plant Daddy, which... okay. She finds Matthew's fake idol, and Matthew and Jaime become an alliance. One real idol, one fake idol. Plant Daddy and Plant Mommy. All of this is weird. She then goes to the journey, which gives her a second immunity idol, or so she thinks, and eventually giving the real idol to Kane in case of a knowledge's power. She then gets swapped over to Soka, where Frannie and Matt just dismiss her as the next boot if they go to Tribal, even if she did have an idol, much like where Josh was on the tribe. They don't go to Tribal, and she's going into this round before the official merge thinking she has all the power and that she's the one to beat, which is so hilariously delusional of her. She has one of the most emotional team challenge wins where she's basically hyperventilating as she's talking. Then there's a hilarious scene of her yelling about how she can't believe she still has her idol as one fake idol shows up next to her name. She's paranoid during the final 9, but smartly decides not to play her fake idol. However, in a Janine moment, the real idol is sent out of the game with Kane going out. Oh no. But she's still thinking she has a real one. Jaime gets this massive dodo edit, and this is around when I started to think of her as a goat that was just going to be dragged to the end. She comes clean about Kane leaving the game with her idol, only for nobody to believe her, and they think she's spinning a tale to convince them that she lost her idol, which is hilarious. Her and Lauren find themselves in the swing vote position between Danny or Carson going, and they vote for Heidi to split the votes. But regardless, Carolyn plays her idol for Carson, and Danny goes home with the majority of the votes against him. Jaime is then trying to convince Carolyn to vote out Carson for reals this time with them, but then that just turns into a plan to vote out Carolyn instead, which fails. The editing with the strategy on the season is kind of confusing, and the wiki isn't helping. Jaime is instead voted out to break up the Lauren-Jaime pair, with Jaime thinking she just went home with the idol in her pocket, which is hilarious. And I feel like had Lauren not won immunity, she would have been the one going home instead of Jaime. I was thinking she was going to be dragged as a goat this whole time. Jaime is fun, but she really doesn't have that extra dynamic push to put her into great tier, so I'm just going to settle on rootable and put her in mildly entertaining. And next up, we have the Lord of Cringe himself, Danny Massa. Danny finds the key to the birdcage and starts flossing, and I haven't cringed this hard since Ozzy's jury speech in Micronesia. Wow, 2 Ozzy references in this video. He quickly opens the birdcage without anyone knowing and puts the bag back with the fake idol in it, so that they'll all be none the wiser. To further dispose of the evidence, he even eats the note. Yes, he eats the fake idol note. He gets all giddy when Matt finds it, and he starts telling people Matt has the idol. Danny is a fun show-off. He does flips at challenges into the water, and is just in general a fun guy. We finally get some personal content from him in episode 5, when he starts talking about having a wife and kid at home, and his breathing exercises he does to expand his mind. I don't know, don't ask me. In order to imagine himself with them at home.
Sorry, Danny. The suits had me install a firewall on your imagination. All that free thinking was wasting the company's cost money.
He then gets chosen to go on the journey, which is really just a feast, and he bros the fuck out with Brandon, and it's kind of insane that he's making strategical plans with Brandon that don't include Carolyn in front of Carolyn, and just going, oh yeah, you're part of it too, sure. Heidi lets it slip to Yam Yam that Danny has an idol that he plans to use on Frannie, which sends Danny into a paranoid frenzy, because Yam Yam telling Ratu could cause them to change the votes to Danny. That doesn't happen, and the plan to idol out Brandon works. Danny then for some reason throws Frannie's name out to Lauren, who he had no relationship with and who just went on a reward with Frannie, so why is he telling her all this? I also don't understand why he used his fake idol on Frannie to begin with if he's just gonna target her anyway. He tells Heidi about his plans to get Frannie out, and for some reason he tells her that he doesn't need her as a number, which is just an insane thing to say about your supposed number one. He then gets a stray vote from Heidi and blames Tika for it for some reason, saying that they're trying to split him and Heidi up rather than the obvious conclusion that Heidi voted for you. One of his major flaws is he thinks Heidi's his number one when she's really not. He targets Carson without wanting anyone else in Tika knowing about the plan and denying it when Carolyn is basically interrogating him over it. Unbeknownst to him, the plan is actually to get him out, and as soon as he sees Carolyn playing her idol on Carson, he knows he's toast, so he goes out doing a Robert De Niro impression, which was funny for about 4 seconds. He also calls Jeff over just to fart during an immunity challenge, which I'm at a loss of words for with that one. Danny's a nut. He was fun, but he also had this issue of not being that fleshed out of a character. Like, at no point did I ever think Danny was really into winning contention, and I also don't feel like I got to know a whole lot about Danny. He doesn't leave enough of an impression on me to elevate him into that great tier, but he can definitely go decently high and mildly entertaining. At number 3, we're finally getting to someone I really like, and we have Matthew Grinstead-Mayle. Matthew's introduction is he does the sweat challenge with Brandon, and he doesn't want to be seen as a guy dragging him down, so he keeps pushing, and they get the challenge done, earning their tribe their flint and camp supplies. He starts talking about how ever since he was a kid, he would be outside, swimming, climbing trees, and he embraces that sense of childlike wonder, and Matthew seems to genuinely be one of those I'm here for the adventure guys. His adventurous side gets the better of him while he's climbing a big rock wall and he slips and falls into the rocks below, dislocating his shoulder and fucking himself up pretty good, especially how bad he cut open his foot. There's no real reason he did it either. Dude was just having fun and wanted to climb a big rock. He's lucky he had only dislocated his shoulder too. He sits out at a next challenge where Claire tells him the details of the journey that conflicts with Lauren's story, which plants seeds of distrust in him. He tells Brandon and Jaime about Lauren lying and lets them know Lauren is playing the game and shouldn't be trusted. He gets spooked by Jaime announcing she's playing her shot in the dark, and he plays his shot in the dark where he fails, losing his vote in the first round, where Maddy goes home. Next day, Matthew then finds the key and unlocks the birdcage for an idol while hiding the fake idol for Jaime to find. She's celebrating her discovery with Matthew, which actually bonds them together, which is hilarious. They form an alliance with Matthew being Plant Daddy and Jaime being Plant Lady, which is just really weird, but okay. He gets nervous when Jaime is swapped over to Soka because that's the end of the Plant Alliance, and he realizes he now has to work with the newly swapped over Carson to be his new alliance. They seemingly become really close, and it's looking like they both can recover from this precarious predicament, mainly from being such fucking nerds. Carson wasn't the only one building Survivor props, let me tell you. The next day, Matthew cries to Carson about how much pain he's in with his shoulder and how it's killing him inside because Survivor is his dream. Unfortunately, he can't take it anymore and quits the game after the immunity challenge, saving Tika from tribal council and letting Josh get one more round. I feel like Matthew might be a lock for 50. I can totally see it happening where they grant him another chance to play the game. He was the only big character outside of Tika and the strategic center of a Ratu tribe that had the numbers, and it sucks he couldn't make it to the merge. I feel like the merge could have been very interesting with Matthew mixing things up. Matthew comes out of this season being one of the few people I actually gave a shit about, and I could put him in entertaining. And big jump up to the final 2, where we go to 2 characters that are among my favorites of all time. Starting it off at number 2, we have Yam Yam Arocho. Yam Yam introduces himself by being really excited to be a gross little starving piggy who poops in the ocean for a month. He gets a lot of content in the first episode with a lot of humorous moments coming from him, like asking if a dinosaur is going to eat them or if candy is inside the birdcage. Yam Yam is just a treat. He seems to be on top of his Tika tribe, but getting most of the content along with Carolyn. He seems to be on top of his Tika tribe, getting most of the content along with Carolyn, and he has very good relationships with Sarah and Carson. Yam Yam is devastated when Carson is swapped out of the tribe for Josh, and he, like the rest of the tribe, don't trust him. When Tika loses immunity, he tells Carolyn she's going to be the decoy vote again because she's not a threat like he is, which pisses off Carolyn and is just bad gameplay from an eventual winner. His jaw drops to the floor like a cartoon character when Carolyn flips and Sarah is voted out. It is not looking good for Yam Yam's winning odds here. He's trying to mend a relationship with Josh after Josh tells Yam Yam he doesn't trust him, and they both open up about their experiences being gay and coming out to their families. Yam Yam then talks about how he never had a boyfriend for a while because he just didn't put himself out there because he thought he was unattractive, which shocked me because Yam Yam is just so fucking cute. Just look at him. He's fucking adorable. He asks to see Josh's idol, and he's like, are these the beads from Tree-Mail? As Josh is denying it, but Yam Yam knows. At the pre-jury round, Josh is trying really hard to get out Yam Yam as Yam Yam is trying to get out Josh. The tribe chooses Yam Yam over Josh, and it's now time for Yam Yam to make friends. He dodges 2 bullets on the Josh and Matt votes, the latter being especially dangerous for him. Him along with the other Tikas play swing vote between 2 warring factions and whittle both of them down until they have the majority. He knows when he needs to go against his alliance too, like when him and Carson voted Frannie out over Heidi. He wins immunity in the claustrophobic waterboarding simulator, whatever that challenge is called, the one I hate, granting him safety coming into the final 6. At the final 6, Yam Yam really considers doing a huge move and voting out Carolyn, but I'm thankful he doesn't. Yam Yam is definitely one of the funniest survivors. While looking for an idol, he takes the immunity necklace and goes, found it, and just puts it on. He's always cracking jokes. He's one of the few people on the show who can make an entire group of people belly laugh on the regular. He gets a big good guy scene where he coaches Carson through fire making, and Carson is crying in his arms talking about how much he appreciates him, and it probably gets him to vote for Yam Yam at the end over Carolyn, which was wild. Yam Yam charms the pants off of the jury and tugs every jury vote out of their hearts except for Danny, but clearly he was voting for Heidi here. Yam Yam is honestly one of my favorite winners ever. He's just so entertaining and lovable his entire run. He's an adorable teddy bear of a man. I love the dude, and he is for sure going into favorite. And at number 1, we got my girl, Carolyn Wiger. Carolyn gets the first ever cold open introduction in the show's history, where they show off how awkward she is, which, yes, is one of her selling points. She gets a ton of content in the first episode, and the season in general, mainly focusing on wanting to take the game the way she wants it to go, and not letting it pass her by, and boy does she love over-explaining herself. She finds a snake in the tree she's climbing and screams, making her tribe think she just found the key to the birdcage, only to realize she's just freaking out over a snake. Carolyn's noises are wonderful, by the way, very endearing. She finds the key, opens the cage, grabs the idol, runs back to camp, realizes she left the cage door open, goes back, puts the bag back in, closes it, but then she forgets to tie the bag back up or put anything in it to make it look not empty, and Carson figures out someone took it pretty quickly. Helen gets suspected as the person who took it, and Helen goes home over to easy vote Carolyn, and Carolyn smartly decides not to play her idol here. Carolyn then gets this idea to throw everyone off the scent of her having the idol by finding 2 red sticks and making an X in the birdcage, and then placing another pair of sticks and an X by their bench logs where she buried the fake idol. It's actually kind of brilliant in its stupidity. It's so needlessly convoluted that it actually becomes plausible as something Survivor would actually do, but at the end of the day, Carolyn doesn't need to do this. However, Sarah falls for it hook, line, and sinker and thinks she has the real idol, so it works out for Carolyn anyway. These players on this season, I've noticed, are kinda stupid. When Tika loses immunity after the one-person swap, Carolyn is planned to be the decoy vote, which just pisses her off as she goes on a rant about how she doesn't feel part of the Yam Yam and Sarah pair. She then approaches Josh with a plan to take out Sarah, and it works, allowing her to become closer to Yam Yam in the future. She then realizes with Sarah out and Yam Yam mad at her, all she has to work with now is Josh, and she screams. She gets chosen for the jury, which is just a huge feast of wraps that look delicious, where she has this opposite reaction Hai had and says, I don't eat meat, but on Survivor, I do. She's then the third wheel to Danny and Brandon's bromance for the entire feast, and it's hilarious how intense the conversation is between them, while Carolyn's in the background going, me too, right? She gets back to camp and realizes, I really need to repair my relationship with Yam Yam now, and starts mouthing to him that they're fine, and telling him that she doesn't want to work with Josh, which is the right move. Yam Yam really doesn't have a choice, so he does, but they avoid tribal anyway. She then has this scene I related to so much, where she's sitting in a circle of people talking, and she just has no idea where she fits into the conversation, so she just sits there saying nothing, and she talks about how she really can't do small talk, and I honestly felt this entire scene in my soul. I have been Carolyn in this scene so many times in my life because I feel like I am way better with one-on-ones than I am with a group of people, especially ones with strong personalities. I also love how she specifically states she only trusts Yam Yam 94%. Such a specific number. Everyone thinks Josh has the idol except for Carolyn, who keeps telling everyone he doesn't have the idol, only to be completely ignored. She has this great content of talking about her sobriety and learning to love herself, and the fact that she has everything she needs in life and doesn't need alcohol anymore, and she can just be herself and be okay with that, which is all just really heartwarming content that makes me relate really, really hard to her. I love how overly suspicious of people she gets even when they're telling her the truth. She doesn't believe Jaime when she's telling the truth, nor Heidi when she's being honest, and it's kind of hilarious how loud and wrong she is about it in confessionals. Carolyn and Frannie decide to flip the votes onto Heidi, thinking she had Yam Yam and Carson voting with her, only to be distraught when realizing her two main allies just went behind her back to vote out Frannie instead. She may not like it, but this is the three she's stuck with. She knows Danny wants Carson out at Final 7, and questions Danny if he does, saying she might be down with it, while Danny denies it, knowing full well he has a plan to put in place to put out Carson, which just pisses off Carolyn. There's a lot of Carolyn going off in confessionals at people lying to her in this season. She then shows Carson the idol she's managed to keep a secret for almost the entire game, which in my opinion is a huge boon for her game, because nobody ever keeps them a secret, and Carolyn only tells somebody the round she plans to use it anyway. Now, was it the right move? Arguably no, since Danny got a majority of the votes there anyway, but I do understand why she did it. She just didn't trust that the others were voting Danny, and she did cement a bond of trust between her and Carson. The problem with the move, though, is she doesn't shut up about how great of a move it was when they get back from tribal, which it wasn't, but whatever. She didn't need her idol to get to the end anyway. She has this hilarious moment where she asks Yam Yam if he can burp in her face after he's back from a reward so that she can smell food, and it's just peak ridiculous Carolyn. The final 6, however, is when I felt most scared for Carolyn. The edit really made it seem like this might be the end for Carolyn's run, but I remember going, oh thank fuck it's Jaime, during this episode. At Final 4, I was thinking maybe Heidi would take Carolyn out in fire making, since Carolyn was the best at making fire, and honestly Heidi might have beaten Carolyn if she tried, and maybe that could have earned her some badass points with the jury, but nope, Heidi bullies the nerd instead, and Carolyn has a free ride to Final Tribal Council instead. I went into this really hoping for a Carolyn win, but knowing deep down that Yam Yam is meant to win it. Carolyn just can't articulate her game in a way that the jury really gets, and it's frustrating because Carolyn played a great game. Flawed, yes, but it was still a great game, and the fact that she's a 0-vote finalist is kind of criminal. She couldn't get 1 vote, really? She couldn't get Carson's vote, really? That's really disappointing. She played a way better game than Heidi, and she got a vote. For shame, jury. For shame. Shame.
Shame. Bad vampire.
Anyway, Carolyn Wiger is the queen of neurodivergency. I'm declaring that now. It's canon. She is being sworn in as we speak. The faces she makes and the noises that come out of her mouth are just an entire vibe. I feel like I relate to Carolyn more than I ever did any other Survivor player. She's my Survivor spirit animal. She truly is an inspiration to the weirdos. She's so unapologetically her, real as fuck, and I really appreciate the way she played the game. If she's not on 50, I will raise hell, but she is clearly a lock. Not everyone loved Carolyn, but the people who find her annoying don't matter. I don't care about your opinion, you're wrong. There hasn't been a character I've liked this much in a while, and she is going very high in favorite. And this whole time, I was trying to figure out who she reminded me of, and I figured it out. Stuart's mom from Mad TV.
Hi, Ma. Sir, just no more sugar, okay? Just stay away from the sugar.
44 was like a better version of Ghost Island, where there were two interesting people in the post-merge, and the rest I was not invested into at all. I know some people like this season, but I found it so disappointing. Other than it being the season that has Carolyn, there is absolutely nothing remarkable about Survivor 44, and it's the worst of the new era so far, easily. It is so goddamn boring. The twists are just kinda dumb, the fake idol stuff goes nowhere, nobody even plays any of the fake idols, and it's really completely carried by how good Carolyn and Yam Yam are into not being a completely bottom tier season. But it's pretty close, because boy is it bland. I'm glad 45 is a huge upgrade, because this is when I was fearing that the new era was just gonna keep getting worse. Next up is 45. Who would have thunk? 45 coming after 44. No way. I love the numbered season. No, yeah, it's totally not reminding me of North Korean dictator naming sensibilities. No, it's great. Also, I'm getting so fucking tired of Fiji. Holy shit. I miss seeing different things rather than the same old papayas and the same old rock formation and the same beach, same puzzles, same challenges, and the same everything. It's almost like they're proud of it for some reason. Wow, we've gotten away with doing the same shit for 8 years straight. What a legacy Survivor has. Fucking hell, dude. Anyway, if you made it this far, you're a legend. I cannot wait to see you in Survivor 45. And goodbye.